All right, we're live. And,
Oh,
well, yeah, we are live. Welcome. Welcome, everyone. So, this is HashiCorp Live. As you couldn't have tell if you couldn't tell from the trailer, that's our new trailer, courtesy of Rob, DevOps Rob, who spent so much time culling through all of our terrible clips on Twitch. Sometimes we have some real interesting sound bites in there. But we'll be posting the trailer on the channel, but we won't be playing it every time. But I figured we might as well debut it now since Rob worked so hard on it. Anyway,
good.
yeah, I know. Welcome to HashiCorp Live again. But this time we're going to do something a little interesting. We're going to do Consul the hard way. Cole, would you care to describe the premise of why we decided to do this exactly?
Because for many moons, I have struggled trying to understand the ways of Consul. Rosemary has taken me under her wing and explained her many Jedi techniques to me, and they have continued to go over my head. So we decided that starting from the beginning and going all the way to the end, doing all of the hard things, looking at the config files and talking about the details that tend to get glossed over would be a great idea. And here we are.
I will say it wasn't that bad. Like you had some general understanding, but we were basically trying to work on something, and you got like a really rapid crash course in it. And I to your credit, you picked it up really quickly, but there's a lot of other pieces that you're like, what is going on? And I think everybody is like, what is going on sometimes with Consul? I know a lot of folks that I've chatted with who are getting started are like, we don't really know where or what to start. This is basically from scratch. So if you just want to use Consul, go to HCP, HashiCorp Cloud Platform, and you can provision the control plane, and you can just use it. What we're going to do is dive into it. We're not going to go too far into it because, quite frankly, there's a lot of components. But what we're really going to focus on is, well, in Cole's case, what do you need to do to get a cluster up and running? We're going to try to reference what we can in documentation. I will caveat this in that I am not a Consul expert. I don't have an exam certification. I don't have a certification, so anybody who's being like, "Hey, you're an expert," I'm not an expert. All right, so no. Let's get started. And I guess the first thing we want to talk about is what exactly is Consul and what the problem is trying to solve. So Cole, ever tried to do anything with networking before?
Yes, many times. Many
Yes.
stressful and
Yes. Everybody likes to blame the network for a lot of things. And one of the impressions that I got when I first started getting into networking was that there are services. They register with the network, and in order to communicate with each other, they need networking, right? But the problem is we tend to assign network identity to service identity. The two are often squished together, and it's kind of unfair in some ways, right? A good example of this is in the container space, or even if you were moving a server from one network to another, you might find that the network identity, the IP address, is not going to be the same as the service identity, right? So a server that might serve hello world one day could be 10.0.1.4, and the next day could be on 172.16.0.5, for example. And does that, yeah. You don't have to raise your hand. You're the only one here. By the way, anybody who has questions in chat, you can plop it in chat too. I mean, we're
just to clarify terminology and what we're doing right now. So you're giving us this nice overview of the problem space that we're going to dive into. And one of these first things is network identity versus service identity. By network identity, you mean generally IP address. Yep.
Yeah, precisely. Cool. Yeah, we'll just say IP address. We're not going to go into the whole network layer. It's just. No, we're not going to try that. But for a very rudimentary definition of network identity, let's just say IP address, right? Because that's where the communication happens. So on the TCP side. So for the most part, when you have one or two services, these things are pretty easy to manage. You can just update them if they don't change that often. But as you grow the number of services that you have and you incorporate new workloads into your environment, like containers, that perhaps change IP address every other second if it's, a crashed container. Well, network identity is really hard to keep track of. IP address isn't really a good way to identify what a service is and what exactly it's doing. So that's the problem statement in a nutshell. And I think that whenever I was working in networking, the way we solved this problem was through a configuration management database, right? This was a database that held all of the inventory metadata for a given server and its corresponding application. So for example, as a youthful server admin, I would go in and examine all the tagging in vSphere and ensure that all the tags in vSphere had application tags as well as line of business, cost centers, everything else, and make sure that correlated to our database, which stored all of this information. Inevitably, the two records would be different, right? Because if you're changing things over time, sometimes you just maybe decided that the server, the server that the application needs should be on Red Hat 7 instead, or Red Hat X version, and it wasn't reconciled with your CMDB anymore, right? Because it's saying it's Red Hat 6.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of problematic. So basically, henceforth, recently, I guess, in recent years, people have started to think differently about the solution, right? Rather than say there's a database that stores all this inventory, can we build automation, better automation, so that we can make sure that this database, this configuration management database, is truly the right source of truth, right? We can actually treat it as everything in here is correct, it's updated, it's dynamic. If services change, then the data entries in that catalog change as well. So here we are with the solution, and that is Consul, right? Consul at its very core has a lot of functionality in it, and we'll explain kind of like the general, there's a lot of capabilities. I'm gonna shuffle this first. So by extension, because of this problem, right, which is a couple problems rolled into one. It's a problem of service identity. It's a problem of service registration. It's a problem of service discovery. It's all three. Because of all of those problems, right, Consul serves as a solution for those three things, right? You'll see a catalog. You'll see service identity information. And you'll see a lot of other interesting, I guess, capabilities that have extended Consul, extended those problem statements. Now, when you think about those problem statements, service discovery, service identity, and service registration, all of those three things lead to, I guess I would say, like nice sprinkles on top of the cupcake, because I like cupcakes. And the nice sprinkles on top of the cupcake are service mesh capability, right? And they're like a network policy in the form of intentions. Right. So because you're able to have a source of truth in this service catalog, you're able to register services, discover them, update this catalog very dynamically. You can do really nice things that are kind of the sprinkles, and that's service mesh and the network policy aspect of it. Because now you actually know that those identities are, for the most part, true. Right. They're more accurate in some way, so you can actually implement a layer on top of it. So you don't have to have separate stuff. Yes.
So just for my own understanding here, so moving from a world where you have a bunch of apps or services, right, that you're keeping track of in one central place and having to update every single time they change because we're tracking things by network identity or IP, moving to a world where instead we just think of it as a service. And by service identity, we mean some way to like know that it's a service. So probably like a domain name, correct? Just something like that. And what you're saying is Consul has three parts that it does, which is keeping track of those, storing all of them, and then letting other ones discover each other.
Yep,
right?
that's correct.
And then Nice. And then top of that, being able to keep all those things in one place, because it does that, we can also do things like you said, network policy, specify which ones can be accessed by each other and which ones can't.
Yep.
Yes.
Great. Excellent. All right. Yeah, so we got that in the first, I think, 15 minutes, which is great. I think it's important. I do say it's important to recognize that some of this stuff evolved over time, right? So what you will see is that, yes, you can configure Consul for just service discovery. You can configure it for just registering stuff into a catalog. Yes. You can configure all of these capabilities individually. There's even a key value store. Naturally, why do we have a key value store? It's literally because service identity mapped to network identity and metadata about a service is a key and a value. So hence why it all exists there. So the result is that what you can see is that with all of these capabilities, the Consul at the end of the day is able to encompass a lot of, solve a lot of the problems that you might have just by adding and extending new capabilities on top of it. But you can configure them all individually if you want. All right.
Which is why when I was first getting into this, I was like, key value store? I thought this was a bunch of other stuff. What's going on here?
You were very puzzled. I was like, I'm not really sure how best to describe this. Okay. So everybody, if you're interested in Consul use cases, there's a page that says Consul use cases. I'm not going to go into it, but I dropped a link into chat. And so we'll talk about architecture next, right? So how does Consul do all of these things? Or why does it have the capability and how does it get there? All right, we have this architecture diagram. I refer to this architecture diagram because it's great. It's a great visualization of effectively what Consul architecture looks like. If you are interested in the actual diagram as well as the write-up, I'm going to plop that into the chat as well. All right, so Cole, I know I gave you a crash course into this, but where do you suggest we start?
I think we begin with a request coming in to find another service.
Okay.
Does that work?
It's probably better to start not from the service
Okay.
Because there's a whole set of there's registration involved. I mean, so there's a lot of prerequisites.
Gotcha.
So let's we'll change the narrative and we'll say it's a service. It's someone like myself or another service wants to access Consul, right? They want to know what's going on. They want to maybe just reach out to the API. So we reach out. The first thing that happens is that when you actually call Consul, you're reaching out. Meaning people, you are going to reach something called the control plane. I mean, we can talk about the terminology back and forth. If you're in the developer space, right, this is probably, this is more server. You can call it a server. This is your server plane. If you're in the networking space, this is called the control plane typically if you're looking at software-defined networking. So this control plane or server plane has a set of, nodes. And these nodes all communicate with each other. They take in requests for, let's say, various registration requests, information about creating things with the Consul API. The cluster of the servers themselves have a leader and a follower. You'll often hear the term raft discussed. I will not go into raft too deeply because it can be there's a whole talk on it, so I'm going to post Sarah Christoph's talk, which I highly recommend, and it talks about all of the important protocols that run Consul. So you'll hear about Gossip, you'll hear about Raft, you'll hear about Surf, which was previously a product tool at HashiCorp too. But the short story of this is basically one server is the leader. The server is the leader, and it basically decides this is what is the source of truth, right? So if no one understands what is the source of truth, they can't agree on it. The leader is effectively the one that achieves the consensus, right? Of here, this is what it is, you're good. This is what shall be. This is important to know just because if you register services and multiple services are being registered, You might find yourself kind of saying like, hey, is it this one the right information, or is this the right information, or is it both? So the server is effectively there to help facilitate that. I'm probably getting something wrong, so if anybody's in Consul and talking in the chat, please just correct me. Okay, yeah.
So servers, they hold all the truth. One of them, though, is the leader, but it still shares things between the followers.
Yep.
Right. Cool.
Correct.
That is all.
Yeah. We're not going to talk about ports. That maybe is later. But quickly, like if the servers do need to communicate with each other because they need to know what's going on. So they're on port 8300. So that's their port. And then, well, I'll scroll so that you can ignore the bottom half of it. So the next bit is client. The client is basically the way I think about clients is it's the data plane. If you're in networking, it would be considered the data plane. If you are in the development space, they are quite literally clients that connect to the server, right? And the purpose of the client primarily, I'm not going to go into all of the features or all of the ways that clients work, but basically clients are there to help facilitate service registration. So if you can imagine that maybe a service is in like a subnet in US East 1A, right? It will go look for a console client in US East 1A, say, hi, client, I'm a service, let me register to you. The client will then say, oh, look, here's a service. I've got some information, and passes it to the server, right? So the idea is that if you have local area networking, which is why you see LAN gossip, local area networking gossip. So this is maybe like within availability zones of a region, you might consider deploying multiple clients. That way it's easy for a service to connect to Consul and register very quickly, right? It's gross oversimplification. Yep.
So for these clients here, these are, if I have a service that I want to introduce to the Consul world, I would have a Consul client alongside the many different applications that I want Consul to know about, and those apps need to tell Consul, yo, what's up? And they tell the server, and then everybody's happy.
Yep.
Yay! That's all.
Exactly. Now, we're not going to cover service mesh today, but those who are looking at this architecture, you're like, what about proxy? I heard Consul uses Envoy proxy. Envoy proxy and proxies by extension are part of the data plane, right? So what they're doing is basically actively chilling. This is terrible. I'm sorry, everybody. They're actively co-located with each service, each instance of the service, to report information. That basically they report information and gather more information from the client as well. So the point is that there are many parts. There are two parts to the data plane when you think about it, and it's kind of a weird. It's not exactly the right terminology in terms of the architecture, but effectively, if you're trying to make the analogies, it's almost like there's two parts to the data plane. There are the proxies, and then there are the Consul clients, and then the servers are part of the control plane.
We plan to do something later with proxies, right?
Yes, we will, because that like needs 4 episodes to do. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. All right, so that's the crash course in the architecture. Cole, any questions? Anything we want to talk about further? Anything that I missed that we probably should mention?
I think that's it. In essence, we have the server plane, which keeps track of all of these services, and then we have the clients that tell the servers about the services.
Yep.
That seems, yep.
Yep. Awesome. So that's again, gross oversimplification. But if you're trying to get this in 10 or 15 minutes, those are the real key things that you need to know. We'll dive into it more as we actually look at the active configuration. It's great to know the general architecture, because what we're going to do today, hopefully, is get one server and one client running, and then we'll hopefully be able to access the Consul UI.
Yeah. And then after that's for today, and then in the future we're going to hopefully build upon that to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Be interesting.
To become
It will be on
Charizard,
virtual machines.
Essentially.
Yeah. We'll talk about containers too, because everybody's like, what about containers? There's a lot of pieces to this. So why we're stripping this all down to the base configuration and showing you on virtual machines is that if you know the configurations on virtual machines, you'll know where to look for how they map to the container space. So
Yep.
at least that's helpful. All right, Cole. I think we should probably explain what we're going. I guess we should explain our code base because
yeah, sure. Let's get.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Okay, let me stop sharing. Sorry, everybody.
Sounds good.
Stop sharing. Okay, there we go.
And now I shall begin sharing. All right, so there is my Twitch screen, and here is what we got. I should probably show the architecture diagram really quick. So in order to keep things, time sensitive, like a cooking show, I've gone ahead and I've prepared something for you guys, a beginning point. And that beginning point is simply that we have a VPC, so virtual private cloud. We have a public subnet and a private subnet. On the public one, we've got a load balancer that's going to point to our Consul server so that we can eventually see the Consul UI. And then we have a bastion that we're going to use to jump in and access and do all of the configuration. There's more in here, but if I had tried to fit all the little components there, I don't think we would get through all of it. But this was all done in Terraform here, and there's nothing too complicated about it. We're just pulling in AWS. We've got our VPC, a ton of different things, the different security groups, to which is not a lot. We're going to come back and tweak these as needed, but we just have some basics here. A load balancer that's going to then register with the Consul server or register the Consul server in its target group. And then most of all, we have our 3 instances. We have our bastion, and then we have our server with a script that we're going to work inside of that will just go up and run, and then the client with the same thing. So I get the sense from Rosemary, a lot of our work is going to happen in these 2 files right here that will run as soon as we push that out.
Yeah. I also think maybe we should SSH. I don't know if you tested this, but we should just SSH directly into the server first and then write the files there, and then we'll copy them into user data. I know this is a little backwards, and yes, infrastructure is code, but if we wait for user data to run, we'll literally be sitting here for 5 minutes, and everybody on the stream, I'm sorry, you'll be staring at us like waiting for Terraform to run and recreate, and for AWS to recreate the instance. So we're going to just SSH directly into the machines, and then write the files, and then we'll copy them into user data so that you don't have to, we don't have to worry about it later. Can you zoom in on the terminal?
Yep, I can make that bigger.
Thank you.
I'm just going to...
I'm just checking it in the chat.
How's that? How big does that look?
More.
Hello, Rosemary. Okay. More.
Yeah, I think you're good.
What about now? Okay, cool.
Okay.
Let me go get that bastion IP here.
Okay. So while Cole SSHs into the bastion, we are putting server. Why do we have a bastion? Well, we put the server and the client on private subnets. They are in different private subnets. Or are they in the same private subnet? Cole?
Yeah, they're in different ones. On the diagram, they're not.
Yeah, on the diagram they're not, but they are in different private subnets, just to show some of the networking stuff that you'll have to work through from a configuration view. But in the meantime, what we're basically trying to implement just some rudimentary, from a security view, at least a rudimentary kind of secure configuration. It's not perfect, right? There are a lot of things to go in and improve, and we'll talk about that later on. But in this case, we're just going to make sure they're both on private networks, because the minute we deploy on public and we get everything all sorts of hullabaloo, our networking, might be affected. Yeah. Why do we have to use Bastion? Use Boundary. Yes, we did consider that. And then we were like, oh no, but then we'd have to teach Boundary. So then, yeah. So, but I completely agree. I have been using Boundary for some of this and has been very helpful. But in this case, we're trying to make sure that as we teach this, we don't introduce new tools. But maybe that's another series. What's up?
So I am in the server here, just to remind, we can do some stuff in here. We also just have the script here that we can work in as well once we confirm stuff that will run, and we can just reapply it through Terraform. But how would you like me to start here?
Okay. So we're in the server. We're going to start by configuring the server. Remember, everybody, that the server is effectively the control plane, aka it does all the things. It serves the API. It's basically the point of entry. So if you are a human user trying to use it, that is basically where you would go. What we're going to start with is, well, installing Consul. So when you go into a server, the first thing you need to do, any server or any client, you install Consul. So Cole, could you go seek the Consul downloads page?
I can. Let us go find it. Here we are.
Okay. You are on Ubuntu?
Yep.
Yes.
So we will do all of this. So would you like me to just straight up run this inside of the server itself, or would you like to put this in the script?
Let's run this in the server itself.
Cool. And then we can just update the script kind of like as a history of what we've done.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. I've copied my thing. Although, now that I think about it, I have a NAT gateway. We'll see if this can reach out. Hopefully it can.
Yeah, it should. I mean, otherwise we can't download anything. Oh, yeah, there we go. Okay, so right now, step by step, what we're doing is we're adding the key to install the HashiCorp GPG key so we can install the Consul binary. Courtesy of our fantastic release engineering team, we can install it from package repositories. So we're installing it from a package repository. You can go to the releases page and you can download and unzip and put the binary on. Like, you can also do that too. Nothing wrong with that. The one thing to note, at the time of this session, we are using Consul 1.10.1. I'll explain a little bit of the differences. It is going to make a big difference in terms of the service mesh aspect, but for now, just keep in mind it's 1.10.1. Okay, and yes, I like the rigor, Cole. It's like you're documenting everything we're doing.
I'll forget it otherwise.
Okay, so we've installed Consul 1.10. You can tell if you've installed Consul 1.10 by doing Consul space -v, V for version. Yep.
Yay.
Yeah, so you'll notice that Consul 1.10.1. That's how you tell if Consul exists. Consul in itself, as the binary, it's a CLI. It's a CLI in general, so you can get the help. You can do Consul help, I think, and retrieve information about all the different configurations that you can use. You have a couple different ways that you can not only run the agent, which is literally Consul agent, you can also use the CLI as an interface to the Consul API. So for example, you might see like services, right? Consul services is a catalog of information that you could possibly use. All right. So next thing we're going to do is create a systemd file. Oh no, my speaker changed. Sorry, everybody. 1 second. Okay, here we go. All right, so we're going to need to open a systemd file. So for those who are not as familiar with systemd, basically we need to run Consul agent as a continuous process on the machine. You can't just, Cole, you can actually try this. You can run Consul agent. Right. So, well, you can run Consul agent and then you have to specify data directory. That's the first thing that we have to configure. But if you run Consul agent and you add the configs in, you'll notice there's a run that streams some logs. It's because it's an actual process. So we do need to put it in systemd so that when we start the machine, we can run it as a background process. We don't have to sit there and stare at our open session, active session on the terminal. So let's create a systemd file. All right, I am not the systemd expert, so I'm going to refer to some documentation. In Consul, there's a tutorial that does tell you a little bit about systemd and the configurations you need. Cole, I don't know, do you have the link?
Let me open it up here. Okay, so looks like we're going to be putting this in this specific area in user USR.
Yeah, Blarin, I appreciate that comment. Who is the systemd expert, really? I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So we got that. And then we will, I don't know if I have to sudo that. Let's see if we can get away with it.
Yeah, you should be able to. Oh, no, you have. I think you have to.
Yeah, I think that's
Especially because of his user lib. Yeah. All the Linux. More Linux. Okay. All right. So there are a couple things in here that you have to configure. And we'll go through them line by line. Does this already exist?
It does. I was just thinking, why is this on here? Was this added to
I
the
think,
default database?
magic. Well then, okay. So we should have probably done this where we just download the binary from the releases page. But this makes it easier. I guess if you install, I didn't know about this one. I guess if you install if you install Consul using the Linux packages, it will actually create the systemd file for you, which saves us some time.
Convenient.
Magic. Completely intentional. Okay, so I'll go through some of the required lines. Okay. So, description documentation requires and after, you do have to have the network. After all, it's Consul. You need networking. Oh, yes, it's in the deb file. Yes, thank you. Yeah. Okay. So condition file not empty. All right. So this etc consul.d/consul.hcl file is the Consul configuration. If there is no Consul configuration, the service will start, Consul will start, but it won't have much configured, right? So you do need to, at least in the systemd file, you do want to point it to etc/consul.d/consul.hcl. You do want to set some configs. Yeah.
So the console.hcl file, that's essentially the configuration information that Consul's going to use when it starts up.
Precisely. Yep.
Awesome.
And why do we set a Consul server and a Consul client? Well, they're going to have two different configuration files. So whatever you configure for your server isn't going to be the same as what you configure for your client. So that's something to keep in mind. So we're going to configure the server. I'm going to reiterate because I know there's a couple terms that we're going to constantly going back over, but we're going to reconfigure the server.
Yeah.
The environment file. Oh, go ahead.
Just real quick. So right now, though, we have one that would, if we do nothing, would be for both. But on each of those, we're going to have to change this file.
Precisely.
Cool.
Yep.
All right, that's all.
Environment file will store some environment variables. There are a couple environment variables you could pass to Consul if you don't want them in, for example, if you don't want them in the config file. There could be certain paths. I don't know. There are a couple of different ones. But for now, we're not going to touch environment file or do a console.m file, really. There's not much in our initial configuration we might need to do. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Linux, yes, Linux. User console, group console. That's Linux permissions. Nice that we have that there. It's not running sudo. Exec start. This is the start command that I mentioned before. The user bin console agent, right? Cole, when you ran it, it said, I need a data directory. Right now, what you'll see in this command line is there's a config-dir config directory. So it's pointing to etc console.d, which is what we mentioned before, is where we're going to store the config file. Yeah.
So right here.
Yes. What's funny is that just because we don't have -data -dir as a command line, it is actually something that's merged in console.hcl. So what I mean by this is that if you set configs in console.hcl in the config file, those will get picked up, but you can override them with the CLI.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But in general, it seems like doing things here is going to be cleaner than just doing them all in this one command. Cool.
Yes, precisely. Now, caveat to this is that if you look at any of the Consul Kubernetes stuff, you'll notice they are using a lot of CLI commands. And that's because of the overrides, right? So it's tricky to pass. But the most simplistic iteration, at least for an initial Consul cluster, would be that. All right, so everything else we're going to omit. There's not, sig term, restart on failure, etc. So let's exit out of this. And let's check out what's in consul.hcl. So let's go to etc consul.de/console.hcl. Okay, let's see. All right.
Stuff.
Consul has
Many
a
things.
lot, has many configs. Many configs. So, I don't know. I feel like I don't remember the exact expression that removes. What's the bash expression that removes the comments? Because this is quite a bit.
I'm not sure.
It's
honestly.
fine. It's okay.
I can just push through stuff though.
Yeah, it's fine. Okay, so there's the defaults there's a Learn tutorial, which I'll paste in chat. There's a Learn tutorial about how some of the defaults that you might find, default configurations you might find. And there's also a whole list of more descriptive options, not more descriptive, but the list of options is also described at the console.io docs as well. But you'll notice there's a lot of comments in here that explain each and every piece. We'll talk about the most important ones. Some of them are the important ones that we need are commented, but you'll notice that data directory is set to opt/console. Most excellent. So that's the first one that we need. The other one that you might want to set, although it is optional right now, we probably won't do it. We'll probably won't do it now. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Ah, yes. Cat console grep. Yes, thank you. Thank you. That we have in chat the grepping of what is not commented. Or what's Thank you. We'll cross the we'll actually Cole, can you exit out of this and drop in one of the I don't know if you can see your chat or not, but
Oh, no, I can't. Let me go look.
it's okay. Here, I can Yes. Console cat HCL. All right. Let's see if this makes it easier.
Actually, yeah.
Yeah, cat etc console.d/console.hcl grep-v. Yeah, there we go. All right, so the only thing that is shown, the only thing that's in this file is data directory, which kind of is good in that, All right, before we move forward, though, I'll explain what data directory is. Data directory stores the console data, right? So it is in memory. When you do have console servers, there's a whole set of things that you can think about in terms of availability, configuration, storage, etc. But at least the initial data is always going to be written to opt console. So you do need preferably a data directory, a dedicated data directory. You might consider, a file mount of some kind, but that's ultimately up to you.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So let's go into console.hcl and let's actually configure a couple things.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So we got data center. Data center we'll configure later. I don't think we'll configure it now. By default, it will be DC1. But console data centers are particularly important if you have multiple environments, that you want to separate out, right? So in the case of a cluster roughly maps to the data center, but there's some. We'll get to that. That's a little bit more of advanced configuration. Cole, I leave it to you to decide if you want to rename your data center to something that you
we
think
could call
is more
it your
descriptive.
DC1 instead of my DC1.
I don't know. We can call it Cole's DC1. We can call it VM's. I don't know.
I'm okay with it being mine.
We'll just keep it as DC1. By default, it will be DC1 basically.
Okay.
So
do you want this
ignore
just
that
changed
for now.
just straight up DC1?
No. You don't need to. It's a default. It's fine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Just don't uncomment it. You're fine.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So let's plop down to client address.
All right.
Okay. So client address is basically what console well, it says right there, the address to which console will bind client interfaces. So this case, if you could uncomment it, Cole. In most clouds, in most clouds, you want to bind to all interfaces, right? The reason why is that you want to make sure that it's able to communicate on all interfaces, no matter which one it is communicating to. You don't, I would say that you could separate, right, some of the specific addresses. For example, if you have like ETH1, an ETH1 interface versus an ETH2 interface that you wanted to separate the two, and you want the client address, to be specific to that, you can do that. In this case, we're going to do it on all interfaces. In AWS, I suspect this is probably the best idea, just because there are ENI, various interfaces in AWS that we can't always account for. So we'll just start with 000. I don't know for sure if it will work. So we'll just start there.
Sounds good.
It is better than putting it on loopback and then eventually just doesn't work. All right, so UI config enabled. UI is the built-in web UI server. So you have like a nice Consul UI. You might see some of them in the tutorials and stuff. Let's enable that. You can just, enable true. That's it. That's really all you need for now. We're not going to go into any of the other configs, but UI, you can do a couple of other, you can enable a couple of other places, but for the most part, you probably just want to enable.
Makes sense.
All right. Sorry, I'm cross-correlating. Okay.
You're good.
So this is probably the most important config for servers. You must uncomment out the server equals true. That is a great idea if you could just uncomment that. We're laughing, but literally you're going to look at this and you're going to be like, why is this not coming up in server mode?
Yeah.
So uncomment that. It basically indicates that this is going to be a server. It is not another one.
Good.
Okay. So let's see. Next is, what is this one? Bind address. Okay. This is another one of those that you have client address versus bind address. They have those two always, in most console deployments that I've done, I've always uncommented the two of those.
Okay. I have a question.
Yeah.
What is the difference between bind address and client address?
Okay.
In nutshell. Yes.
So bind address is for any internal cluster communications. So for example, client address, client mode. So client address is for when you want to access via UI, right? So anything inbound to it, if it's like, let's say from human to there, you're human to UI or human to console API or CLI to console API. Client address is the one that it's going to be accessing, right? So if you have DNS, you might just say, let me just do the public address or something like that. And that's going to be the client address if you decide to do that. Bind address is for within the cluster itself. So
that makes sense.
So clients and servers, console clients and servers both have to be able to communicate over bind address. If you're familiar with the networking terminology, you can consider client address to just be the management interface, and then the bind address to be the data interface in some ways.
Gotcha.
For those who are familiar with networking. And there's a question in the chat, what is client mode? So client mode is the default. So as I recall, if you don't have server true, if you have that server false or you just don't include it, I believe it defaults to client.
Yeah.
So client mode is what we mentioned before, where servers are part of the control plane and then clients are part of the data plane. Clients help with service registration and a gross oversimplification.
Nice.
And yes, they're correct. Client is local node. It doesn't participate in cluster gossip. Yep.
Nice.
All right. We getting great help in chat today. Okay. IPv6. Yeah. Do we want IPv6? Why not? I never set the IPv6 bind address.
I've got it all set up for for all of the machines, but I mean, only for the public bastion though, since IPv6. I mean, I've got it. I don't think I've got it. Actually, I do think I have it adding those. Let me double check here.
Let's just uncomment it because sometimes it does have some weird side effects.
Yeah.
Yes, it's very good to be prepared for IPv6, but I don't want to introduce more side effects, like some weird side effect to it.
Yeah. They're open to it. I think that I've got an egress gateway open so that they can reach out, but since they're private and since all IPv6 is public, I don't think we need to do anything there.
Yeah, let's just comment it out just so that, I mean, it exists, but
okay.
Comment. We'll just comment it out. Okay.
Ooh.
All right, so there's that. Advertise address. This used to be a pain for me. So advertise address is like if you want Consul to say, hey, I'm of this IP address, right? So when you register nodes, it will wave and say, hey, I'm this IP address. This is what I advertise. And so it's going to be, when it says it and it advertises it to you, for example, this is in some ways the identifier by which you would identify the node. So in this case, we might consider it as like the actual private IP address of the machine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why does it default to the loopback here?
So advertise defaults, I don't actually know why it defaults to loopback. That's a good one. Let me look into documentation.
Sounds good.
I'm sure someone will probably tell me at one point why it's defaulting to advertise address.
Oh, so this sounds like somewhat similar to the client one.
It is. It's very similar, but it's basically saying
same.
if you have multiple interfaces, you might want to set a couple different ones. And this will be important on AWS. So I don't know for sure. That's why I'm a little hesitant. So I have a suspicion we'll probably start this and it won't work, but we'll figure it out because this is where, when you start with Consul and you try to configure the server, the trick is understanding the right combination of client, bind, and advertise.
Yeah.
So, yes. So it's a very, because I'm trying not to cheat and look up my previous AWS configs, I don't remember which permutations and combinations I should use. So we're going to avoid that. Okay. All right, so plopping down further. Okay. Bootstrap expect.
Bootstrap expect. Here we go.
Yes, you need Bootstrap expect. You need to configure this to basically the number of expected servers. In this case, you might have any infinite number of servers, but generally you want to start. Like if you start a Consul cluster and you expect three servers to come up, if you start a Consul cluster and you expect 3 servers to come up, you change this here. This is only when you start a Consul cluster. This is if you are adding, servers to an existing cluster, you're fine. It doesn't necessarily need this. It's just when you first start a new cluster and it has to elect a leader. So Bootstrap expect, we only have 1 server, so please set this to 1. It is not highly available. Sorry, everybody. I can hear the crying. I can hear the crying.
But it will be in the future when we come back in a later episode.
Okay, so let's scroll down further. We're not going to talk about retry join because they're all right. So I guess maybe I should just mention retry join. Retry join is what happens when it tries to join into a list of the members of it's basically any agent who needs to rejoin into a list of members. We don't have a Consul server yet, so this doesn't make any sense for us. It only makes sense if we've got other servers that we're adding right now or other clients. So for now, 1 server, we don't need to configure it. But you do generally need to configure it for if you have multiple instances in a cluster.
Cool. So real quick, just to go back up here through what we've looked at, data center, the name, what you name it seems to be pretty much up to you as long as you're consistent, correct?
Repeat that.
So data center here is just the name, the identifier. What you name it doesn't really matter, just to be consistent. Data directory is where it's going to store its data. Client address is going to be how clients, so anyone like myself or someone trying to access the UI or access the API through the command line interface, this is how they're going to access it. And right now, this is just listening on all the things. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yep. UI, turn on the UI, server, tell it it's a server. Bind address, though, this is what we're going to say we're listening on to talk to other console servers within our cluster. Yep. Bootstrap expect, how many servers do we expect to come up when this begins? Advertise address is okay, and then then we'll go retry join. This is handling what happens if members or something fall off and want to come back. Yeah. What about encrypt? Any thoughts on encrypt?
Nah, we don't need that right now. This is for security. We're going to talk about security separately. We did, by the way, for those who are tuning in, we did chat and debate whether or not we should add security into this, and we said we'll hold off on it because there are more configs here. So encrypt is to secure the cluster gossip. So don't touch it right now.
And we'll come back to that, in the future.
Okay.
Cool.
So I'm sorry, I'm looking at my notes because like previously I wrote notes on these things because I constantly forget. Okay. Bind is the interface which is expressed in the form of the IP address. Bind is the interface or specifically the IP address that Consul uses locally, right? So it's basically saying, you could say it's 127.0.0.1, but why not?
And it would only be listening locally.
Yeah, exactly. Advertise is what the Consul agent says its identity is to other agents, right? So for example, the reason why advertise is particularly important is that let's say we add another Consul server. That Consul server needs to know how to communicate to the leader, right?
Yeah.
And if that advertise address is, let's say, a non-routable IP address for some reason or another that's on the machine, then it won't be able to communicate.
Okay. So just for my own understanding here, so bind address, then this is what we're saying that we're going to listen for traffic from other servers. Advertise address is what we're telling those other servers like how to talk to us.
Yep.
Sweet. So then do we need this?
We do.
Okay.
And before you uncomment it, save this file and I'll show why you need it.
Okay.
Okay. So if you could do ifconfig on there. Yeah. Okay. So let's sudo ifconfig. Sorry. No? Oh, here we are. Okay. Sorry. I don't know why I didn't see it before. Okay. So you see ENS5, right?
ENS5.
Yeah.
Oh, duh. Yes.
Interface 5, ENS5. So the advertise address should be 10.255.2.235. I assume that's your private network, right? That's part of your private network address space?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So if you had multiple interfaces, this is the particularly case if you have ENI enabled and it's a Kubernetes node, for example, or if you have oh my gosh, brain. If you have VirtualBox, for example, you need to choose which interface you're using. In this case, we could probably just get away with just saying the IP address, this IP address of ENS5.
Okay. Do you want to do that?
Yes, let's do that.
Sounds good.
And I believe there's a handy dandy, actually like a more dynamic way that you can do it. I'm trying to look it up and get you the doc. 1 second.
Oh, so we don't have to manually come into this file.
Exactly. Yeah. So let me do this.
Okay.
Okay. I'll drop it into the doc, but I don't know where better to look for it. Should I just drop it in Zoom chat? Where should I put it?
Yeah, you can Slack it to me.
Okay, let me just Slack it to you. Okay. So it's not the bind part that you need to care about, really. It's the get interface IP.
Ah, okay. And so we would then, let me just, actually, let's just quit it. So we don't even, do you want me to change this back to what it was?
No, it's fine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
There you go. You just
Wait,
have
you
to
want me
get
to
rid of
actually
the console agent bind. You can, yeah. You
Oh,
don't need the
I
console
see what
agent
you're
bind
saying.
part. You just
I
need
see
the
what you're
squiggle, the squiggle
Yeah.
brackets.
No, I see what you're saying
don't.
now.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna call them squiggle brackets. I know people. Like,
I was about to head to the system D file
Yeah.
and change that.
So
but yeah, okay.
I will say I am not entirely sure if this means that we will have, like, I'm not sure if in terms of transferring this to other VMs, I don't know if ENS5 will always be the interface name. So we'll cross that bridge when we get there, but at least we don't have to put in the IP address, right? Because you just want to avoid putting in the IP address. So instead of the double quotes around ETH0, can you do the tick mark instead?
The
Like
tick mark.
Tick mark. It's under the tilde
That?
on the keyboard. Yeah, that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
Yes.
do ENS5.
Ah, okay. I see what you're doing.
Yeah, it is ENS5, right? That's the interface name.
I believe so. Let me do a double check. It
So
is.
what this will do, yay. Okay, so what this will do is basically tell console when it starts up, hey, look at the interface of ENS5. There's a couple of other docs that they're like, hey, yeah, there's you can get private interfaces. There's a whole bunch of other things you can do. But we're just going to stick with setting the ENS5 interface in here rather than putting in IP address. General perspective, just don't put in the IP address in here. Yeah.
And for this file, this little method here is going to pull that for us. This will work.
Yes, precisely.
Cool.
Yep.
Nice.
So that way we don't have to worry about it. It is using, I believe, like some kind of console templating underneath it. It's definitely using some Golang templating. Yeah, it's definitely using some Golang templating. So I need to look in the code base.
Cool.
But yes. Okay. So I guess that's really all we needed for now. I don't think we needed more. Okay, all right.
The environment stuff, do we need to do anything in those?
No, I don't think we need anything in the environment variables. There shouldn't be anything. You could look at it, though. Couldn't hurt to look. Yeah. So we don't need any environment variables right now. If you did want to set maybe secrets or you want to inject the secrets in there, you could do it. But we don't have any secrets right now. Like we don't have encrypt. We don't have any of the other things. We don't have certs, console behaving, the certs enabled either. So we're just going to start that.
Makes sense.
Okay. All right. So let's do sudo systemctl start. Or no, start. It's not. Wait, can you do status console? Let's just see if they already started running it. Sudo systemctl status console.
Duh.
Yeah. Okay, it's good. Fine. Let's just do the sudo systemctl start console. And let's check status. Oh, look.
Hey, it's running. Yay.
Are you happy?
Did you think it was gonna start?
I wasn't sure. You can never be sure with these things. There is one there. So let's actually do a debug. Let's see if it works. Can you do console members in your CLI? Well, look, it's alive. Okay, so by default, when you do this in the CLI, it sets console HTTP address to localhost 127.0.0.1 and port 8500. If you have TLS enabled, if you're doing this on your actual laptop, on your actual computer, you would have to set the console HTTP address outward.
And here's
Yes.
just that. Here's that address that we set, the advertise address. So this is how, for sure, how the server advertises itself to be connected with. So, yay, confirmations.
Yay. Okay. All right. So that's live. Yay. Look at that. Look at that. It's available. Okay.
Yeah.
Our next thing on the list, now that it is available, is that we wanted to
Yep.
access the UI, right? I know we're
We did.
slowly getting there. We may not get to the console client today, but at least
Yeah.
we would have configured the UI.
And for my okay, so if I do this through here, since we have changed this, it is going to trigger that entire server being redone. So for now, it's going to not do that.
Yep. I would say that we copy the
Config
Oh,
file.
we'll do that later, maybe.
Yeah, I'm gonna just say, yeah.
We're not gonna. We're gonna copy.
I'm gonna be really lame here, and I'm gonna just copy this whole thing here. Oh, wrong one.
Sorry, I've been standing. I know it's good for me, but I'm gonna sit now. Sorry, everybody.
This is gonna be so messy. Oh, that's right. I don't know if I can get the clipboard from VI there, so I'm gonna have to do it like this. Okay, there we go. So I'll come back in here. What I'm gonna do, audience, is come back in here later and fix or just add all of this, or make it so that this file gets uploaded and used immediately. It seems that I failed to copy the whole thing. But that is all I'm doing here.
We could grep the, we could do the console, the cat console grep thing.
Yeah, that's probably this simpler method. But just for time, you know what? I'll come back in here and just get this later. Okay. Yeah. So cool. Anyhow, we want to, at this point, do the UI, correct?
So that means, yes.
Yeah. So just as
I know for a fact, you also don't, you just want to revert your changes, I think, completely. And we'll copy in the install later, just because
that works.
Terraform will detect the diff anyway, unless we tell it to ignore it.
Cool. So right now it is listening, the load balancer is listening on port 80. The console server I had for 8500, is that the UI port?
Yes, that is the UI port.
Forwarding to?
Yep.
Okay. So we've got that, and then the target group is also forwarding to 8500, and the attachment is 8500. So unless things are bad, which is always a chance, this should let us just get right into it. Okay.
Are we sure? Is the listener 8500 or is the listener 80?
Oh, duh, the listener's 80. No! Why?
Okay, go back to EC2.
Let's see here. So do we have our listener set to 80? It's going to forward to this target group, which on this target group is sending
unhealthy.
Unhealthy.
Why is that an HTTPS?
Oh. Well, it should be. Oh, why is it HTTPS?
Can I increase the pebcat counter?
Ah, here it is, because I have this right here as HTTPS.
I'm increasing.
This was actually what I needed to ask you.
Yeah.
With this health check, what should this be sent to?
Good question.
Because from what I saw, it was node name or something, but I don't feel like we'll know the node name from the get-go, so I didn't really know what that should be.
Right. Yeah, let's just set it to the UI. Let's just set it to base path.
So just this?
Yeah, just set it to that for now.
Alrighty.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
But I'm sure there's a recommendation. I'm looking up the AWS reference
Cool.
console reference architecture doc just to check if
1
there's
second.
a suggestion.
I need to refresh my credentials here.
I'm sure someone in chat will tell us some suggestions on which API endpoint to use. But it probably would be status. No, not status, sorry. I mean, we probably could set it to status leader, and then it would just tell us the status leader. It will match the 200 code.
I'll go.
Is there a default rewrite? I don't know for sure. Terraform will apply with a plan. Someone's saying that we might it might do a default rewrite on base path, but we can just do status leader. Status /leader.
V1 status leader?
Yeah. No, yeah. Wait, sorry, I'm looking.
Look, right?
Yeah, V1 status leader. We can also check on the machine just to make sure. Yeah. You can do curl HTTP / /127.0.0.1.
Okay, because it is listening to that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is on 8500,
8500,
right?
yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
/V1 /status /leader.
Nice.
There you go.
Cool. Okay, so then this should be good. Let's do Terraform apply. And there it goes. You can do it. Yes. I mean, I guess I could look through it, but I like living on the edge, so I'm going to say yes. Okay, so we just updated the load balancer here to try to connect via HTTP. Turns out I had accidentally left that as HTTPS. We've also updated the health check so that it checks an actual endpoint that exists versus just the one that I had in there temporarily. So there's that.
Still destroying.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got to recreate the target group attachment, and yeah, I don't think this should take too long though. So in terms of time, you think we're going to be able to get to the client, or do you think that's going to wind up being chapter 2?
How long do you want to go for? If you want to go for another 20 minutes, we might be able to get it done.
Yeah, I mean, we've covered a lot of the stuff, and I imagine the client's going to be a little bit quicker, so because we don't have to walk through that whole config file again, right?
No, we don't have to walk through the whole config file. It will be a different config file, so we may have to chat a bit about the differences, but it's for the most part, yeah. It should be, yeah, it should be pretty much the same. So, should be okay. Yep. Okay. So, actually, do you have multiple terminals open? You do have multiple terminals open.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's actually SSH into the client. We want more. Okay. Thank you, Rob. Rob, we played the trailer, by the way. I don't know.
We go get the client's private IP here. And
so for those who are catching up on this, we are going into the client, and we're going to configure the console client now.
We are. So step 1, download or install all the things.
Yep.
So simple enough.
While we wait for Terraform to destroy target group.
Yeah, we'll just get the obvious parts done and out of the way.
Yeah, but I will make this star asterisk. We're all learning together. So if you are hearing something and you're like, Rosemary, Cole, you're struggling on the explanations, please just drop in chat. We appreciate it. All the different explanations and all the help. Like I said, I am not a console expert by any means. This is just me trying to configure things over time. And even I'm like, where are my notes? Because I have multiple notes.
But see, that's so like how development always is. I don't think I've ever done a project where I didn't have notes and docs like across an army of tabs.
Yeah, exactly. We all love notes, and if anybody has a better understanding of it, please do put it in the chat. I appreciate the feedback. Okay. We were at c console.d/console.hcl.
Do you want to look at the service first or no?
The service
The
is, I think,
systemd
going to be
file?
the same.
Yeah, I just want to
Yeah.
see if it's
Oh, yeah.
definitely there.
Oh,
just
yeah.
because
Apparently,
that
it's
was
part
a
of the
new
dev
theme.
package.
Yes,
Yeah, it's part
it
of the
is.
package.
Nice. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
So notice we're not touching the systemd file right now. Like, we're not going to make any changes because we're doing all the changes in the config file. So
Yeah,
the client
that'll
config,
reflect.
exactly. The client config will
Yeah.
just be in console.d/consoles.hcl.
Cool. So that means we need to go to the Etsy. I've already forgotten the path, console. Yep, .d and then console.hcl. And here we are again.
Yep. Here we go.
Let's see where this other thing is. Uh-oh. Is currently in use. Well, yeah, it is currently in use. But just because it didn't delete that one doesn't mean it didn't necessarily make the other one, though. Let's go see. I'm surprised at you, AWS. Actually, I'm not, but let's refresh. See what's happening here. Okay, well, is it even registering anything, though? It is not. Okay.
I mean, there is always the solution, and I'm gonna tell you the equivalent of the help desk when it comes to Terraform. Did you run apply again?
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna actually try here. Why was that having such a problem? Because is it the target group? It is just because it's in use. Okay, well, let's. You know what? Am I like, let's just see here. Is it because I'm in it? Is it that simple? Because that would create the usage of that listener. Or perhaps no, because I'm going through a different.
But it wouldn't
Never
be.
mind.
You're not SSHing through
Yeah.
the ALB.
Yeah, no, I'm not. So
Oh.
that doesn't matter. It was me being superstitious. You ever had that happen where you're like, I don't know what I did, but it worked, so I'm gonna do it every time. It's like it's how my cats think about stuff. It's like, I did this one thing this one time, it got me a treat, and now for the rest of my life, I'm gonna do that.
Very, very cat-like. Okay. While that's once again destroying, I guess we should go back to the client. I know we've been back and forth.
So we're back into the client now.
Oh, yes. Okay.
And then we will go back into the HCL file.
Okay. So, data directory does not change.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty good there. Client address, let's uncomment. We'll keep it the same.
Mm-hmm.
Bind at, you don't need the UI config, right? So clients don't need the UI, or shouldn't have the UI. You could enable it, but don't. Just, you only really need it on the servers, so don't enable it on the client. Server true. I would just set this to server false. So uncomment and set to server false.
Okay.
Just for the sake of consistency, it's a personal opinion that I have on just making sure that if one is true, the other is false. That way, for automation purposes, you can always parse. Okay, so bind address is back to, you can uncomment and back to 000 again. Advertise address, again, we have to set, and we need to set it to the get interface IP. I don't know if it's ENS5 again, but we should probably check.
Let's go check that. It is. Huh. Well, that's
there
convenient.
We are. Yes, ENS5.
Second. Okay.
Squiggle, squiggle. And as Blake put it in the chat, thank you, the get interface IP function uses Go template syntax. The function itself comes from Go sock ADDR library.
Nice.
Yep.
Nice. That's good to know. Okay, so there is that one. Did we need to do anything else down here?
So no bootstrap expect because it's not a server. So you don't need bootstrap expect. Now, remember there was that entry that you pointed out called retry join?
I do. This long
Yes.
thing here.
So retry join is what allows console agents to join each other.
Okay.
So we need to basically point our client to the server.
Ah, gotcha.
Yes. The console server. So there are a couple ways that you could think about doing this. You can do something like a cloud auto join, which is what the examples are below. So you see like provider, tag key, tag value. So this dynamically retrieves it from the cloud provider. That makes it really easy, and you don't have to necessarily configure things like you don't have to configure the IP addresses or like load balancers or whatever.
Yeah.
In this case, I suppose we should just do IP for the sake of rigor, but also if you do this by yourself, that way you have a sense of what exactly you're doing.
Yeah. We can look at the cloud auto join later or something. They all have tags, but I wonder if it's that simple though, because they all do have the tags here.
Okay.
Let's see.
Yeah. Let's try it. Do you have consistent tags? Oh, okay, yeah. Then try it. I guess all we really need is the project.
So which one? Just the project tag?
Hardway. Yeah. Open up the link there. There's the link to the Cloud Auto Join docs.
Oh.
Yeah. More details.
It's actually right here.
Grab that.
Nice. Okay, auto join. It really does seem like it's that simple. Unless I'm missing something, it looks like you just...
I think it depends on whether or not the EC2 instance... I suspect we didn't do anything special with the EC2 instance with IAM, with AWS IAM.
No. But I don't think that with their default permissions, I don't think we should have any problem with them accessing the metadata. Because I'm pretty sure that's how they get them. Let me just see here.
Yeah. So you should be fine. Like the only thing I would say is that let's try it and we'll see if it does it. The one thing I will say is that if your AWS EC2 instance has some special roles, IAM roles and stuff, it may not work by default. So we'll try it.
Yeah.
And then we'll see. So it's going to be tag key project with a capital P, I think, or something.
I'm trying to see if it needs like escaped quotes around this or not. I don't see all the examples just have ellipses. So I'm not, I guess we'll just try it.
Yeah, you can, if you want, you escape quote. Yeah, you escape the quote.
Yeah, that's what I was seeing if it needed projects. Oh, forgot to go into the next mode.
So some discussion in the chat. The ask was, would the retry join on Azure work with the managed identity? And the answer is yes.
Wait, what am I doing here? Oh, there we go. And then the tag value was console, and then misspelled hard way because I forgot that those are two separate words. Okay, does this look correct?
Yep, I think that's all we need to configure. If you could do a cat console.hcl and just dump and make sure we didn't, miss anything, that would be good.
Okay. Yeah. No.
Yay.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay.
If this works instantaneously, I would be so happy.
Yeah, I was just like looking at this. I'm like, I don't. So for those who are tuning in, we didn't set anything special on the EC2 instances. They don't have specialized roles. They don't have lockdown identity. They don't have lockdown IAM or anything. So theoretically, this should be fine. So whatever EC2 metadata, auth metadata is there, it should work. But who knows?
Just for everyone, if you're on an EC2 instance, you're always going to be able to do a curl into the metadata And this is how I suspect, because at least when I was working with Vault, that's what I found when I was configuring it. This is where it's going to pull these different values from the other instances.
Yeah, it's the same same library.
Cool.
Fun fact.
Really? Nice.
I think it's the
Okay,
same
so
library.
what now, Master Rosemary?
Okay, well, sudo systemctl start console. And then we cry tears if
Here we
it
go.
if it
And then
status.
well, hey, it did fail to join cluster.
Region is US East 1.
No known co.
Well, can you drop down or systemctl? Can you go down and see if you can see more logs?
Am I missing something? Why are these so
status? Oh no, that's it.
Because
Filter instances with project equals cannot configure cannot discover address. Okay, so it did not pick up the tag.
So it did not work.
What a puzzle.
Wonder if it's because this has failed again. Because
I don't think
the reason
so.
Why,
right? It wouldn't be getting the ALB. It would be getting the EC2 instance.
So what could it be? Could it be that so inbound, would this affect any of it?
Inbound 8500. Well, you do need to know. I think. Well, hold on. If we go back to the handy dandy architecture diagram, but it should. The problem is that it doesn't seem to be discovering it. It's if it was discovering it, it would come back and say, "Hey, this is the problem," right?
You know what we could do? We could just curl from the client to the server.
So,
right.
Rob is asking if the tags are on the NIC or compute. You don't have network tags right there? Actually, like the labels itself on the EC2 instance. It's not like because I don't think AWS has. Yeah, AWS doesn't have network tags. Okay, so it is existence there.
For connectivity, we could just curl from the client to the server, but I have a feeling that'll probably work.
Just give it a try. Couldn't hurt. It's not discovering it, which is why I feel like there could very well be something with the EC2 roles. That's why I'm a little...
I'm not in the server anymore.
Yeah.
1 second.
Go from client to server, right? So as long as you pick up the server IP.
Many windows. 8500. V1, status, leader, and nothing. Okay, so since it's hanging, that probably means that this is incorrect.
Are they not in the same security group?
Let me check what I got here. So
when we check security groups,
the server is allows 8500 from the load balancer. But it's not allowing it from the client. That's the problem. Yeah. So, so that's why that's not able to connect. Yes, that is. So I guess I'll just make another one here.
More. Yeah.
Allow client. And let me see here. I forget how to. Oh yeah, that's right. We can just do the source security group. Where is the client one? Did I just call it?
I do think that AutoJoin has something question mark. We might have some IAM permissions that might. It doesn't seem like it's discovering it. Not that it's a good or bad thing, but we didn't configure anything for it, so that's why I'm a little bit like, maybe it's not quite there. I don't know.
I mean, for the console. That there might be something. I can check it because I've done it before, the AutoJoin thing. I can look. I don't know off the top of my head though. Okay, so unfortunately this target group is still just done. donezo here. And if I'm going to change it through this, well, we can try again. Let's see.
Can you just taint the ALB?
Do what?
Can you destroy the ALB? Target destroy the ALB?
Just all together from the console.
Yeah.
The console, not console. But let's see if if we can at least get the security group to update before it complains about the target group being in use, which is weird because I tore this down and put it back up a number of times. So something we have done to the target group is making it stop. Has this changed at all? It still hasn't. Worst comes to worst, I can always just register it manually, but let's see how far this one gets this time. Until then, is there anything you would like to look at or discuss?
So let's go back to the retry. Let's go back to retry join. I have a sneaking suspicion that we have to configure role assumptions in AWS, like a role in order for us to describe the instances. So let's comment that out rather than do the auto join.
Okay.
And then if you could just do the retry join with the console server address instead. So you can comment that. We'll return to it at another time because there are some additional configs that you'll need depending on your cloud. But if we do it the hard way, we literally, well, we would put in the ALB DNS name maybe, but uncomment that line and then let's add the IP address of the server, the one server we have.
This one right here?
Yep.
Okay. And then we need
just
to
drop
get
in
the private IP.
Yep.
Yeah. Of the server.
Yeah.
Which will hopefully be put into that target group. But
that way we don't get stuck on configuring the auto join piece. We can always come back to it, but at least we make sure we get the rest of the config correct.
Yeah.
And hopefully it can also access it now too.
Yeah. I forget. Is there a way to just restart or do I need to stop?
So yeah, just do systemctl restart console.
Okay, nice. And then we'll check out the status. You know, I could have probably typed that by the time I got to this, so.
Okay.
No.
So here we go. Remember we talked about other ports, right? So there are other ports we have to open, courtesy of our handy dandy architecture diagram, and also this lovely error message, which tells us exactly which port we also need to open besides 8500.
Yeah, 8301. So that needs to be opened up to that server. Cool. I will do that here. Second, let's see.
Yep. That's for LAN gossip. For those who are tuning in, 8301 needs to be open for LAN gossip.
Deleting target group. Resource in use. Currently being used by a listener or a rule. Well, no crap. It's being used by a rule.
I would say here's what I think. Go back to your care form. And go into the ELB and just comment everything out.
Oh. Why?
Just so that you delete that segment, right? So the problem right now is that there's a chicken or egg problem with the ALB and the listener group and the target group. So if you comment everything out, for now, because that is isolated away from the server.
Oh, so it'll delete it and remake it. Okay.
Yeah. And let's add the security group and let's get the client registered, and then we'll come back and recreate the ALB.
Okay, so you just want okay. So you just want this all gone right now.
Yep.
I never thought to do that.
Infrastructure is code, folks. If you want to delete subsections of your infrastructure, just be cautious when you do it. But if you've got them well structured and well laid out in different files, comment it out.
Cool.
Yes, the console, the diagram that I'm referring to is the console reference architecture. It is. Here we go. Pop. There we go.
Okay, so
It is very
those are
helpful.
that.
It is like the way I look for my ports. I know that you can look at the docs for the ports, but I never find them correctly, so I rather do them on the diagram.
So let me see if that port was opened up. It was. So since that's the case, if I were to go over to here and do this curl, it now works. So now it can talk to the client. So that's good. But now we need to come over here, and you said add another rule here for 8300, correct?
Yeah. Yep. 8301.
8301. Okay.
Yep. We'll need 8300 between servers, but you only need the 8301 for for all the agents. You'll need the
Gotcha.
You need the 8301 for the cross agents.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah.
Okay. Well, we'll leave the description the same for now. Oh, that's not on there. This will just add the that port to the security group. So it should be a fast change. When we remake the load balancer, that'll be what takes a little bit, but yep. And there we go. So with that,
Yep.
what is going on?
We'll do a restart again.
Okay.
Literally, we have to do this the ground up. So now you're getting the sense of us debugging. Alrighty. Okay, so then let's do console members. Yep.
There we go.
Yay, we have a server and we have a client. Now we just have an ALB. That's the problem.
Yeah, so now we just need to try that out, which I'm hoping should just work here. Before yeah, 8500. Yeah, this should be it. Oh, please work, thing. just be nice. Just be nice.
I think it's the order of operations issue. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that comment trick, I've never thought to do that, to isolate a piece. That's so useful.
I mean, that's what happens. It's almost like, I mean, you know, you could, I don't know. I don't know. I do it quite a bit. Just because it's easier than doing Terraform target. Mm-hmm. But I think it's a holdover. I think it's a holdover from like software days when I would just comment out sections of functionality or whatever, just so it would omits it. It's a very sad feature toggle.
I have no shame in using sad feature toggles.
It's a sad dev feature toggle, and it's not meant for production. But you know what? Like, it's a sad like developer's feature toggle. Comments in general, I think, are sad developer feature toggles when they're not documentation.
So for my own clarity here, what we did is we dove into the node that was destined to become our server. We set up the config file. It had some specific configuration around it that setting up the way that it talks to other servers, the way that it can be talked to by users, and the way that it can be talked to by clients. We then went over to the client. We just did those exact same things. And since they're both set up to talk to each other, that's what can happen now. Now we're just setting up the ALB so that we can access the UI from the wider internet.
Oh, yes. So this is just console cluster running. I think the next time we'll talk about service registration. At least that way it's a better sense of how services are being registered. That's a little bit trickier, but we're separating them out for now. So here you have a sense of what needs to be configured for servers and clients. Any of the configs that you've seen today will map to some of the configs you'll see either in the container space or any of the other configurations that you might have.
I'm just going to go ahead You know, is this sad, but I've never used the tag D flag to do this. Like never. I've literally never thought to do that. Does that
I
make me a
remember
bad
it. See, that's the
person?
thing. I remember it was a thing, and then I was like, wait,
Yeah.
I don't. My brain was just like, what's the thing that takes out the things? And I just verbally just can't. It's a Friday. I know, folks. I'm sure that will be clipped and put on Instagram or something. We have an Instagram. I'm sure that will be clipped and put on Instagram or something. But
I'm just grabbing these files for my reference for later so that I can add those into the project.
yeah. Ideally, we would want to change retry join to the ALB address
That makes sense.
or a DNS, the DNS for the console server, but we'll just do the hard coded one for now, just so that it's a little bit less complicated. But maybe we'll come back either next week. We'll come back and do cloud. Not next week. A couple weeks from now, we'll do auto join, or we'll do service registration. But I think the service registration is the one that I think you're more interested in trying to figure out, right?
Okay, got those for later. How are we doing, Terraform? We are doing done, and it worked this time. That means that I need to get the new DNS. Where are we? Here, there we are. Actually, let's go see if the target group registered its targets. It did not. Why?
Well, refresh.
Why did you not register? Maybe. Ah, haha.
It is healthy.
Look at that.
Oh, it worked.
Where is the D oh, because I'm in a target group stuff. Let's go to the load balancer. Grab that. Aha! Ah! Loud noises.
Yeah. All right. So, couple things to notice. This is the UI of console. This is 1.10. So the 1.10 UI, lovely, great.
It is.
Love it. One thing to know is that it is not secured, so y'all can access this. Actually, no. I asked you to lock it to your client IP, right?
Shh. I mean, I set the variable up. It kind of went up, yeah.
All right. All right. Okay. We're working with it. It's not secured. We'll get to how you secure it. There's some nuances to it.
Yeah.
There's a system called access control lists in console, and it will secure the user interface with the token system. So in this case, we aren't doing that. We'll layer on top of it, but I think we pretty much succeeded in this regard. If you click on nodes, this is what I was mentioning before about the advertise address, right? For what you see in console, if you have multiple network interfaces, you want to register the IP address that A, the other agents will be able to communicate on, but B, something that you can recognize in here. So here you'll have the leader, which is flagged, that's the server, and that's 10.25.255.2.235. And that is the advertised IP address of 10.2255.2.235. And then you also have the client, which is on that one right there. Wonderful. So anything else, Cole? I think we can probably call it a day.
That was a lot, both more complicated than I thought, and yet a lot simpler from like the 10,000 foot view, because all we had to do, well, first we did the whole like cooking show. Hey, here's something I'll set up for you. But after that, we just had to install the package through, just download and install the package. And it did the systemd file for us, which is awesome. And then we just changed literally just these things in the config files, and that was it. Like, yeah, and we missed some ports and stuff, but those are all fixed up. So, yeah, that was nice.
Awesome. So, Cole, did this make it slightly less confusing?
Yes, it did.
You can say no. You can say no. Yeah.
No, it did. It definitely did. I think that for me, what would love to dig more clarity into is just, for me, just for the completionist side, the whole client versus advertise versus bind makes sense to me on sort of like the surface level, but I would like to see like in what cases those things would change to something else. Not necessarily do, but just for edge case knowledge, you know. So
Yeah. So a good example of this is virtual box. If you
mm-hmm.
create or Vagrant, you know, so if you
Mm-hmm.
create Vagrant, let's say Vagrant specifically. So if you create if you mimic this in Vagrant and VirtualBox, right? VirtualBox has their own private network interfaces, right? So you can add any number of networks that you want to it. So for those who are not as familiar with VirtualBox in general, there's the internal network, which is 10.0.2.15 usually. That's the assigned interface. And then what VirtualBox will do is you can layer on the internal networks on top of it. So then you get like a list of 4 interfaces. And in which case, these sets of configs are really important to configure, especially because you have to identify which ones are actually routing to each other. So if you have an internal network and you have a set of two machines, they might sit on a 192.16.15 network. That's not a network. I'm sorry, everybody, but my brain is like not computing. And so I think that when you have multiple interfaces, setting each of these will make a big difference. So for example, a client address, right? Or more specifically, advertise address. Advertise address, you might choose one interface, which is that private networking interface that communicates to the other agents that are in the same network. Client address, you might consider sort of like an outbound one, right? It's only outbound.
Gotcha.
And then for bind address, which, did we not have bind in here? Well,
we didn't change it, but I can take a look at it again.
Well, it still worked. I mean.
Yeah. There it is. We did.
Oh yeah, there it is. I don't know why it didn't come out. Whatever.
I don't know. Oh, is it because of this? Does the grep command exclude it because of that? Whoops.
Oh yeah, it must be. Well, now we know.
Ooh.
Yeah. By the way, there are also, I think, bind address, advertise address as well in Kubernetes, as I recall. So.
Is it?
Anyway.
Interesting.
Yeah.
There it is. There's our friend.
Yeah, there we are.
Yeah, cool. So that would come into play in an instance, no pun intended, where I have an instance that has multiple Elastic Network interfaces, for example.
Yeah.
That
exactly.
makes sense.
Yes.
Cool.
That would make a big difference, and that used to be the case in AWS. Now, especially if you do AWS with the Kubernetes, with the container, container AMI, that uses multiple interfaces because of the ENI overlay for pod and container routing. So that's something to keep in mind. All right.
I forget which. I want to try one more thing. Just one more thing. And if it doesn't work, then I will cry. No. Let's go into here. I want to just see, just for my own curiosity, where are we here? What would happen right now? Hey, go to the beginning thing.
Are you going to put in the ALB?
I was just going to see what happens if we just try this.
I'm pretty sure that we need we need to create a role, an IAM role.
Yeah.
With describing instances.
Which role do you think?
Well, we need a role. We need to basically create a role, and the role has to have policy to describe instances.
Oh, yeah. That is correct. It would need to describe instances. I forgot that is a thing. Yep, right. It needs the IAM permissions to describe instances.
Yeah. Right.
So never mind.
Is there an IAM role attached in place?
Nope, there's not.
No? Oh.
There's not at the moment.
Okay.
It wouldn't be too hard to spin up, but yeah. So never mind. Cool. But that's a simple thing to add in, that role. But,
what you could do is pass in the ALB address instead to. Oh no, but the ALB doesn't have 8301. Okay, that's fine.
Doesn't.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Fair enough. Okay.
Cool.
That's pretty much it. I mean, in terms of the Terraform, we'll migrate it into the Terraform and into the Terraform file. And in terms of the Terraform private interface, we might have to have some order of operations set so that we retrieve the private IP of the server from Terraform and then pass it to the template of the client. That will be a way for us to just do this, more simplistically. We don't need to necessarily. Authentication So Blake mentioned the authentication and precedence section, which has all the information on the tasks and the roles that you need, as well as the permission. We did not set a permission on the EC2 instance, so we probably need to create it. But we'll do that another time. In the meantime, we'll just update this with a simpler way
getting the audit thing here, that'll be pretty simple. Just another role with that permission. I think that'll be good. And an instance profile. But cool. So what's on our plate for next time, Rosemary?
Service discovery. We're gonna have to configure DNS. We'll configure DNS. The reason why we need DNS is that we'll then be able to use that for service registration. I mean, you can do service registration. We can still do service registration without the DNS, but we need Consul to resolve. You want to be able to resolve between. I know one of the goals that you had was to deploy 2 clients, 1 service on each of the clients, and be able to resolve to the service between them. And in that case, we would need service discovery, so we'll have to configure some DNS.
Yes. Perfect. That's perfect. That's exactly it. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, thank you all for tuning in, and thanks for joining us as we learn Consul the somewhat difficult way. Today wasn't difficult, but we certainly had some hiccups along the way. If you're interested in learning more, they're saying destroy.
Oh, yeah.
Terraform destroy. Although make sure you saved all the configs that we had and stuff.
Yep, I got them.
Yeah, you're good.
Goodbye.
Thank you for the reminder. Okay. And so tune in a couple of weeks. We'll have a service registration. We'll probably stream every other week, just for the sake of continuity, but also time. It's a pretty big block of time. But if you have any questions or you have suggestions, please let us know. With that, have a fantastic weekend, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.